Welcome to my channel, Rise Up with Steve. Please hit like, subscribe, and don't forget to share with your friends. Let me tell you something today. Sometimes the strongest move you'll ever make is not arguing, not explaining, not begging. It's walking away with your head high and your heart clean. She didn't leave because she was weak. She left because she finally got tired of explaining her worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding her. See, grace ain't loud. Grace don't slam doors. Grace doesn't post long paragraphs trying to prove a point. Grace simply says, I know who I am and I know what I deserve. She stayed longer than she should have. She prayed harder than she should have. She gave chances that most people wouldn't even think about giving. And one day, one quiet, powerful day, she realized something. Loyalty without respect is self-betrayal. So she walked away, not angry, not bitter, not broken. She walked away healed enough to know that peace is more valuable than familiarity. And listen to me closely, walking away doesn't mean you didn't love. It means you finally loved yourself more. She didn't look back because she understood that closure doesn't always come from an apology. Sometimes closure comes from clarity, from realizing that what you lost wasn't meant to go where you're headed. God doesn't remove people to punish you. He removes them to protect you. And the reason she didn't look back, because when you finally choose yourself, you don't miss the version of you that accepted less. She walked away with grace, and grace carried her exactly where she was meant to be. Walking away is one of the hardest things a person can do, because everything inside you tells you to stay. Your memories tell you to stay. Your emotions tell you to stay. The time you invested tells you to stay. But there comes a moment in life when staying costs you more than leaving ever will. That's when walking away stops being weakness and starts becoming self-respect. See, weak people stay where they are disrespected just to feel needed. Strong people leave when they are no longer valued, even if it hurts. Walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally understood your worth. It means you stopped negotiating your dignity for temporary comfort. And that realization doesn't come overnight. It comes after patience, after sacrifice, after giving chances you didn't owe anyone. Most people don't walk away at the first sign of trouble. They stay hoping things will change. They explain themselves over and over again. They lower their expectations. They silence their own pain just to keep the peace. But every time you ignore your own boundaries, you teach people how to treat you. And when respect disappears, love alone is never enough to keep you whole. Walking away requires courage, because it forces you to face loneliness instead of familiar pain. Familiar pain feels safer because you know how it ends. Loneliness feels scary because it's unknown. But growth has always lived in the unknown. Nothing powerful ever comes from staying where you are slowly shrinking. Self-respect means choosing your mental peace, even when your heart is still attached. It means saying, I care about you, but I care about myself more. And that's not selfish, that's survival. Because you cannot pour love into others while you're empty inside. You cannot keep breaking yourself just to prove loyalty. There's a difference between fighting for something and losing yourself for something. When you fight, you grow. When you lose yourself, you disappear. Walking away is the moment you decide not to disappear anymore. It's when you realize that your presence is a privilege, not something people are entitled to. And let me tell you something real. People don't always notice your value while you're there. Sometimes they only feel the weight of your absence. But walking away is not about teaching them a lesson. It's about teaching yourself one. It's about learning that you deserve consistency, respect, and peace, not confusion, excuses, and emotional exhaustion. When you walk away with self-respect, you don't leave with anger. You leave with clarity. You understand that some doors must close so better ones can open. You understand that God sometimes moves people out of your life because they can't go where you're going. Walking away doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stopped accepting less than you deserve. And that decision, quiet, painful, and brave, changes everything. Let me tell you something most people don't want to hear. Grace is not weakness. Grace is strength under control. Anybody can walk away angry. Anybody can make noise, create drama, and burn bridges. But it takes real maturity to walk away with grace, especially when you were the one who was hurt. Grace means you don't let disrespect turn you into someone you're not. It means you refuse to let pain rewrite your character. When someone wrongs you, the easiest thing in the world is to match their energy, to say what they said, to do what they did. But grace says, I won't allow your behavior to steal my peace or my values. Walking away with grace means you don't announce your exit. You don't post your pain. You don't seek validation from strangers. You handle your hurt in private and your healing in silence. Not because you're weak, but because you're secure enough to know you don't need applause to move on. Grace also means you accept the truth without fighting it. You stop forcing people to show up the way you need them to. You stop begging for effort. You stop explaining what should already be obvious. When someone shows you who they are consistently, grace is believing them and choosing yourself. There is power in leaving quietly. No insults, no revenge, no long speeches, just a calm decision that says this no longer serves my peace. That kind of exit confuses people because they expect anger. They expect drama. They expect you to break. But grace keeps you grounded while they're still trying to figure out what just happened. Walking away with grace doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you don't let pain control you. You still hurt. You still miss what could have been. But you don't let emotions trap you in places you've outgrown. You feel the pain, you process it, and then you move forward with dignity. Grace teaches you that closure doesn't always come with answers. Sometimes closure comes from acceptance, from realizing that not everything needs an explanation. Some things simply need an ending. And the most graceful ending is the one that protects your self-respect. When you walk away this way, you carry no bitterness. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You understand yourself, and that's enough. Grace allows you to leave without carrying emotional baggage into your next chapter. This is how you win without fighting. This is how you grow without becoming cold. You walk away with grace, and you let life handle the rest. Let me be honest with you. Staying too long can cost you more than leaving ever will. People think endurance is always strength, but sometimes endurance is just fear wearing a brave face. Fear of starting over, fear of being alone, fear of admitting that what you hoped would change never actually did. And because of that fear, people stay in situations that slowly drain their spirit, their confidence, and their joy. When you stay where you are no longer respected, you don't just lose time, you lose pieces of yourself. You start doubting your instincts. You start questioning your worth. You start normalizing behavior that once would have been unacceptable to you. At first, it's small compromises. You overlook a little disrespect. You excuse broken promises. You convince yourself that love means patience no matter the cost. But the cost keeps rising. Staying too long teaches your heart to tolerate pain it was never designed to carry. You smile in public but feel empty in private. You show up physically, but emotionally you're exhausted. And the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to remember who you were before you started shrinking to fit a place that couldn't hold your full self. People often say, I've invested too much to leave now. But what they don't realize is that every extra day spent in the wrong place is another investment in loss. Time doesn't refund itself. Energy doesn't come back untouched. The longer you wait, the deeper the wound gets. Leaving early might hurt, but staying too long breaks something inside you that takes years to repair. There's a quiet damage that happens when you repeatedly choose comfort over truth. You stop listening to that inner voice that warns you. You silence it with excuses. You tell yourself things will get better if you just try harder, love deeper, give more. But love is not supposed to feel like self-erasure. Commitment is not supposed to feel like emotional starvation. Staying too long also teaches people the wrong lesson. It teaches them that you will accept inconsistency, that your boundaries are flexible, that your forgiveness has no limits. And once people learn that, they rarely change, not because they're evil, but because human nature responds to what it's allowed to get away with. Walking away earlier doesn't mean you didn't care enough. It means you cared enough about yourself to stop the bleeding. It means you recognize the difference between patience and self-neglect. You realize that loyalty to others should never require a betrayal of yourself. There is a version of you that existed before the disappointment, before the confusion, before the constant emotional negotiation. That version was lighter, more hopeful, more confident. Staying too long puts distance between you and that version. Leaving is how you find your way back. Sometimes God is whispering it's time long before you listen. He shows you the signs, the patterns, the repeated lessons. But when you ignore them, the lesson gets louder. Not to punish you, but to wake you up. Leaving late is painful, but it's also a mercy. It's life giving you one last chance to choose yourself before you lose yourself completely. Peace is something people talk about like it's a luxury, but in truth, peace is a necessity. Without it, nothing in your life functions the way it should. Your mind stays restless. Your heart stays heavy. Your spirit stays tired. And yet, so many people are willing to sacrifice their peace just to avoid a difficult decision or an uncomfortable goodbye. You can love someone deeply and still lose peace being around them. You can care with your whole heart and still feel drained every time you have to explain yourself, defend your feelings, or lower your standards just to keep things calm. That's when you have to understand that love without peace eventually turns into exhaustion. Proving a point might feel satisfying in the moment, but it never gives lasting fulfillment. Winning an argument doesn't heal a broken dynamic. Being right doesn't fix repeated disrespect. All it does is keep you trapped in a cycle where your energy is spent trying to be understood by someone who isn't listening. Peace comes when you stop needing validation from people who are committed to misunderstanding you. When you stop explaining your worth. When you stop fighting to be chosen. The moment you choose peace, you also choose freedom. Freedom from anxiety, freedom from emotional chaos, freedom from conversations that go nowhere. There's a quiet power in walking away without proving anything. No speeches, no ultimatums, no dramatic exits. Just the calm realization that your nervous system deserves rest, that your heart deserves safety, that your life deserves stability. People often think peace means giving up, but peace is actually choosing yourself. It's understanding that not every battle deserves your energy. Some battles are won by disengaging. Some victories come from silence. When you keep trying to prove your point, you stay emotionally tied to outcomes you can't control. You wait for apologies that may never come. You wait for change that may never happen. Peace is deciding that your happiness doesn't depend on someone else finally understanding you. Letting go of the need to be right is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because ego wants recognition. Ego wants justice. Ego wants the last word. But peace wants something deeper. It wants healing. And healing doesn't require applause or agreement. It requires acceptance. Choosing peace over proving a point doesn't mean you were wrong. It means you were wise enough to stop arguing with reality. It means you trusted yourself enough to walk away from what disturbed your inner balance. A lot of people are waiting for an apology that may never come, and they don't even realize how much power they've given away by waiting. They think healing begins when the other person finally admits they were wrong, finally explains themselves, finally feels sorry. But life doesn't always work that way. Some people never take responsibility. Some people move on without looking back. And if your peace depends on their apology, your peace is in danger. Closure doesn't come from someone else's words. It comes from your own understanding. From accepting what happened without rewriting the story to make it easier to swallow. From seeing people for who they showed you they were, not who you hoped they would become. That kind of understanding hurts, but it also frees you. An apology can feel good, but it doesn't undo the damage. It doesn't give you back the time you lost, the energy you spent, or the nights you cried in silence. Sometimes apologies come too late after you've already changed. And sometimes they never come at all. Waiting for them keeps you emotionally tied to a chapter that has already ended. Understanding means you stop asking, why me? And start saying, this is what it was. You stop searching for hidden meanings and secret reasons. You accept that some. People are only meant to meet you at a certain level. And when you grow beyond that level, the connection breaks. Not because you failed, but because you evolved. When you understand, you stop personalizing everything. You realize that their inability to show up was about their limitations, not your worth. Their silence was about their avoidance, not your value. Their behavior was a reflection of where they were, not proof that you weren't enough. Understanding also means forgiving without reconnecting. It means releasing resentment without reopening doors. Forgiveness is not permission for someone to hurt you again. It's permission for yourself to stop carrying the weight of what happened. You forgive so you can breathe again, not so they can feel better. There is strength in deciding, I don't need an explanation to move on. That decision takes your power back. It shifts control from the past to the present. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop imagining what you'd say if you ever got the chance. You realize you don't need that chance anymore. Sometimes the lack of an apology is the apology. Sometimes the silence is the answer. And once you understand that, you stop chasing clarity from the very place that confused you. You stop reopening wounds just to check if they still hurt. Understanding brings peace because it's honest. It doesn't sugarcoat. It doesn't make excuses. It simply says, this happened, it hurt, and I survived. That truth becomes your closure. And with that closure, you finally step forward lighter, wiser, and no longer waiting for someone else to give you permission to heal. When you finally choose yourself, something shifts inside you. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's a quiet decision that says, I can't keep abandoning myself just to keep someone else comfortable. That moment is powerful because it changes the direction of your life. From that point on, you stop chasing what hurts you and you start protecting what heals you. Choosing yourself means you stop accepting crumbs when you know you deserve a full meal. You stop calling potential love. You stop romanticizing struggle. You stop telling yourself that pain is proof of commitment. Real love doesn't require you to disappear. Real connection doesn't demand that you shrink your needs to fit someone else's limitation. When you choose yourself, you also choose growth. Growth often looks like loss at first. You lose people, routines, and versions of life you were attached to. But what you gain is alignment. You gain clarity. You gain peace of mind. And those things are worth more than anything you had to let go of. Not looking back doesn't mean you forgot. It means you remembered everything and still decided to move forward. You remember the nights you felt unseen, the conversations that went nowhere, the way you kept giving without receiving. And instead of reopening those memories, you use them as lessons. When you stop looking back, you stop reopening wounds just to check if they still hurt. You trust the decision you made when you were tired of hurting. You trust the version of you who finally said enough. That trust builds confidence. And confidence changes how you move through the world. Choosing yourself also teaches others how to treat you. Not through words, but through standards. People notice when you no longer tolerate inconsistency, when you no longer chase attention, when you no longer explain your boundaries. Your silence becomes your boundary. Your absence becomes your answer. There will be moments when you feel tempted to look back, when loneliness whispers lies, when nostalgia paints the past softer than it really was. But choosing yourself means remembering why you left, not just what you missed. It means understanding that missing something doesn't mean it was good for you. As you move forward, you become someone new, stronger, calmer, more self-aware. And the things that once felt impossible to leave no longer have power over you. You don't look back because you're finally facing the life you deserve. Choosing yourself is not a one-time act. It's a daily decision, a promise you make to protect your peace, honor your worth, and never again abandon yourself for anyone. And once you make that promise, there's no need to look back. Because everything you're walking toward is better than anything you left behind.